Welcome to this series of videos which is going to help you prepare for your final test essay. So to start with, you should know by now, but it's worth 45%, so it's a significant amount of grades. The question or the theme of the assessment is, how do you improve one of the 8 stages of the product life cycle in terms of the environmental and or social conditions? So basically, we will give you an example and we'll ask you, make it better. So there's no secrets in terms of the test or what it is. There's nothing that you won't know except that we will give you a company to work with. We might give you a Kmart, a Supre, a Sports Girl. It'll be a brand other than the ones you're currently working on in your Try project. But it'll be a mainstream brand that you will all be familiar with. It's open book. So you can use all the resources at your disposal, the internet, your notes, tutorial questions, quizzes, anything you like. You have 45 minutes from when we give you the question to when you have to submit the document or your essay. It's one essay style question. And from 8 possible questions based on the 8 stages of the product life cycle. So of these, there'll be one question on each of these, and you will have one question to answer. Sounds easy. The problem is you don't know which one you're going to get because each student will be issued a question on a random basis. So you might get a question on raw materials, or it might be on end of life or on retail, etc. What that means is that the work occurs in the preparation for it because you have to prepare 8 possible scenarios or 8 questions and only answer one of them. And then once you're finished writing it, you simply upload it through Canvas the same way that you uploaded your assignment. So sort of familiarize yourself with that if you haven't already done so. It can either be a Word document, PDF, DocX document are the 3 formats we will accept in that one. Okay, so where do we start? Let's start with this table, which doesn't look very exciting, but is absolutely critical, not only for global impacts, but for any course you do from now or in the future, is have a look at the rubrics. This is the template that Inna and I use to correct your work. So we read your work and then we look at this table and we kind of work out whether it should be a pass, fail, credit, etc. So I'm going to spend a couple of minutes on this. First thing is, look down the left-hand side here. You'll see that we want to see evidence of knowledge, of theory, and then how well you synthesize or put it together in that sense. So the first basis, knowledge and understanding of the problem and appropriate theories and concepts. So when we talk about theories, we're talking about this stuff: planetary boundaries, social economy, natural capital, all of these, and there might be a few more that I haven't put in there, just as a bit of a bonus for those of you that do a bit more work. So having an understanding of these theories is absolutely super critical, because once you write about these theories in your answer, then Inna and I kind of go through and say, well, did you write about the theories? If you did, so in this case, no evidence of concepts or theories. No, because you've written, so you don't fail. Evidence of concepts or theories, we will give you between 13 and 11 marks. Evidence of many, so if you've got more than one, if you've mentioned, where are we? If you've mentioned 2, 3 of these, then you get between 15 and 13 points. If you accurately identify the right ones, so if you've picked the right ones relative to the question that we've given you, then you get between the 18 and 15. And finally, accurately identified a range of interrelated concepts. If you've identified the right ones and you've explained how they work together, so how a planetary boundary and land system change works with the social economy, with health, when it comes to people applying pesticides on cotton crops. By linking those three, you get between 22 and 18 marks for this first component. Remember, this is out of 45 marks. So as you'll notice, the weighting of this whole assessment matrix is in this first part. So that means this is absolutely critical. If you want to start somewhere, start by, taking this list and just writing in one sentence what each one means so that you understand what each of these means. Because it's easy to sort of read it and say, oh yeah, Holocene. But then when it comes to it, you actually can't articulate what the Holocene is. So it's important to do that. Oh, I keep jumping the wrong way. Okay, the second line then, application of theory to current industry practices as outlined in the coursework. That means taking examples that are in the lecture notes, in the quiz, or in the tutorial and putting it in your answer. So that's a simple cut and paste. If you don't put any examples that we covered in the past few weeks or in the past semester, then you don't get any marks for this one. If you have a couple in there, but you've sort of just dropped them in, they don't really relate very well to your question, well, we'll give you between 4 and 8 marks. If you've related it to the theories and concepts, remember the ones up here? So you've provided an appropriate example of land system change or of population growth, then you get a credit. And distinction is appropriate use. If you've used the right examples in the right spots, then we'll give you 8 out of a possible 9. And then notice here substantial and appropriate use. So if you've put plenty of examples in and they're in the right spot or they relate directly, then we can give you basically 9 out of 9 for that section. The next line down then, theory, application of theory concepts to current industry practices using sources beyond those provided in the coursework. That means your own research. So remember up here, the examples all came out of my material. This is your material. So all you've got, it's kind of easy, but it requires a bit of work, because if I've given you an example, say of Patagonia and how they repair their own garments, all you have to do is go research and find another company which also repairs their own garments. And then you would include my example, the Patagonia one, and then you would say, and also company X does something similar, such as this. So you get the credit and then you pick up the distinction mark. So once again, that whole line represents credit this way. It's a bit confusing. Sorry, that's a pass, that's a credit, distinction, and now finally high distinction. Evidence of synthesis of all information into a seamless narrative that addresses the problem. So this is basically how well you've put together your essay, which means how well you've argued your point and explained what you're going to do, explained your solution, explained why it's a great idea, explained what other companies have done, what works or doesn't work in those brands, and it all fits quite well. And again, in terms of picking up the 9 points for this one, clearly written position that is justified to a large extent. So it's good, but not great. We give you the 5 out of 9. Clearly and concisely written. So this is like the academic journal summary. If every sentence counts, you don't repeat yourself, you haven't got a lot of junk in there or excess, then you'll get between 6 and 5.5. For this one, well justified with reasonable and practical solutions. The paper entwines all elements, theory and industry practice. Doesn't mean all theories, all relevant ones it should be, into a cohesive and compelling argument with no extra material. The paper is written in a manner that offers a clear and distinct perspective that lends credence to the position, gives you 7 out of 10 or distinction. And then this one, 10 out of 10, shows a deep level of thinking. This is where we see that you really understand the problems, the complexities of the problems, what your solution can offer, limitations to your solution. Remember, there's no perfect answer. If you present us a perfect answer saying, oh, all Kmart have to do is source organic cotton, well, life's not that simple. It's a good idea. It'll give you credit maybe, but there's problems with organic cotton as well. You know, whether it's supply, quantity to supply, whether it's the cost of cotton, transparency in the supply chain, etc. Okay, so that gives you a bit of an idea of where you start with. So if you're worried about this test, you don't know where to start, you think, oh my God, I'm going to fail it, this is the key. Make sure you understand these theories and then build on that one. Okay, so looking at these theories, then, as I said before, write yourself up a little one-liner, one sentence that says what social economy is, what people with nature model is. And again, you might find this in the materials, but you might find it in the terminology that we did, or you can just write your own up. You know, it's got to make sense to you, not to us. Well, it has to make sense to us as well. So when it comes to these planetary boundaries, this is a system to check on the health of the planet. It uses 9 conditions: climate change, atmospheric loading, etc. And it's graded between green, yellow, and red, symbolizing a change in that ecosystem. Social economy then is a kind of measure or is a model which suggests to have a decent standard of living, people need access, if you like, to certain conditions such as clean water, health, networking within a community, political voice, it goes on, etc. The people with nature model was a relationship between people and the earth, and it was those two coloured circles. So it's how we extract resources, we as people extract resources from the earth, we transform them into products that we then sell, consume, and then discard back into the system. So it's just explaining how we take and then put back into the earth. And then we can question how good it does it. So these three very much, or 3, 4, 5, all link together. And if you understand how they link together, then you've got no problems with this section. The Great Acceleration, do you remember? It was post World War II, post 1945. It was the American economic structure of consumerism. So the middle market, or the majority of people in the world, were afforded enough money to start buying stuff. So it improved their quality of life, but at the same time, it increased the amount of resources we took from the earth. Hence presenting a problem of the more comfortable we are, the less comfortable the earth is. So how do we find a balance between the earth being comfortable as an ecosystem that provides for us and us being comfortable? The Holocene, so this is that period of climate stability where the climate didn't change, and during that same time, coincidentally or not, we don't know for sure, it's just a theory, suggests that's when the economic development model, up down here, is when humans started moving from hunter-gatherer to agriculture to industrial development, all the way through to the final information age that we're in now, and possibly the 4th industrial revolution. The Anthropocene is a suggestion, and we've entered this new era where we, the human race, have become the dominant force, and our actions actually influence the earth and how the earth works. And because of that, we have to be mindful of what we do to the earth. You can't just cut down a tree without thinking about the consequences. You can't just build another retail store without thinking about the environmental consequences of doing so. The economic development model I covered. Population growth, it means the growth in population. So what? Big deal. Well, what's the implication on cities? Cities are getting bigger. They're getting more crowded. What's the implications of that for retail stores? Well, maybe people don't want to drive to big retail shopping centres like Knox or Chadstone. They prefer smaller shopping centres. So you're going to have to redesign your retail stores in terms of the size of them and where you locate them. You might have to offer a free delivery of the garment home. So rather than the customer have to carry it home on public transport or have to walk home with the garment, maybe they go in store, they buy it, and then you courier the garment home. Up to you. The idea, though, as we know, population is growing. It's growing by 80 million people per year, and it's going to be an issue this century, if for nothing else, for resources. More people means more demand on resources. Developed and developing world is this notion that there are two worlds, one with high income, high standard of living, high level of materialism stuff, and then a developing world with lower levels of income, lower opportunities, therefore lower levels of disposable income and consumable items as well. Why do we want to know that? Remember, we said uh, often what happens in fashion, we sell into the developed world because they're the ones with the most money, and we get people in the developing world to make the clothes because they're the people with the least money and, if you like, are prepared to work for lower wages as a consequence. And that's got implications, as you're aware, with garment production and a fair and minimum wage. Final one in this one is tipping points. This is, when does an ecosystem change from being one thing to another? When does farmland become a desert? I think I gave you the example of the Murray-Darling system in Australia, where you've got uh, a river with fresh water, lots of different parties taking that fresh water for different reasons, whether it's cotton production, dairy production, or other crops. At some point, if we keep taking water quicker than it can fall out of the sky, then we will drain the river, or the river ends up being a series of puddles. So where's that tipping point where it stops being a river and becomes just a series of puddles? And why we're interested in that is, if we think that tipping point is happening soon, or has happened, then maybe we say, well, because of that tipping point, we're not going to source cotton from Australian farms because they've sucked the water out of that, and we don't agree with that principle. So understanding the ecosystem, or a particular ecosystem, then allows us to decide whether we want to take the water or cut down the tree or use the land for our purposes. Okay, have a look at this one. Which statement is better? If you're a teacher and you got two answers, student A gave you the answer that red is a vibrant colour. That's the student's opinion. Or you got this one, red is a vibrant colour. According to Menev 2007, colour emotion associations and colour preferences, etc., etc., etc. This is an opinion with supporting evidence. Yeah. So the difference between the two, I hope, is obvious to you, but this is just your opinion, and so that sort of doesn't cut much ice with me in terms of this assessment, because it's your opinion supported by other things, other theories. So let me go back. So you think we shouldn't source cotton from Australia because it uses water. Okay, that's the equivalent of saying this, red is a vibrant colour. If you extend that logic and say we shouldn't source cotton from Australia because it uses too much water, and according to the planetary boundaries, fresh water use is scarce, and in Australia, which is a dry continent, we have problems. That's a much better answer. That's how you have to frame your answers. Opinion plus theory. And that, if I go back, that's this first part we're talking about. Opinion and theory. Here's the problem. Here's the theory. And then your answer obviously is going to be in the distinction part or high distinction part. So always remember that. If you make a statement, back it up with one of the theories in that list that I just showed you there. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to break these up into 8 short videos rather than watch one long one, and they're only going to be about a minute each as a means of um, giving you a framework to work with.